Thank you. Can I bring the committee to order, please? A warm welcome to those attending, viewing us on live council on the YouTube channel Hillingdon, London. My name is Councillor Higgins. I'm the chairman of this meeting. Details of business to be considered are shown today on the agenda, copies which can be viewed under the live broadcast. For all those present in the room and intending to speak, please note that you will be filmed and any statement you make will be recorded and made public. A reminder to anybody speaking today that your voice will only be audible online if the microphone is switched on. Fire alarm, we're not expecting any drills today, so if there is a fire alarm, please follow officers out of the building. Mobile and tablet devices, for anybody that has mobile devices, can you either switch them off onto silent, and as you can see, officers and myself were using electronic devices to view the documents. I promise you, we're not playing Candy Crush, so that's a good thing. Okay, first of all, I'm going to go the attendees of the meeting. Councillors first. Councillor Darren Davis, my Vice Chairman, welcome. Councillor Fahad Chahubidar. Councillor Hector Gohill. Councillor Grishan Mand, welcome. And Councillor Barry Nelson West. My officers is Kate Crosby, Area Planning Service Manager, which is there to my right. Matt Smith, Planning Team. Oh, you are. You weren't there a minute ago. Welcome. Nisha Burnham, Principal Planning Officer, Alan Tinney Transport. Thank you. Planning and Development Manager. Shihar Shahad is our Legal Advisor. Welcome. And James Walsh is another planning lawyer, observing, I believe. And there's Ryan Dell here, who's Democratic Officers. He's the one that makes sure that I do everything in the right order and records the voting. First of all, we go for apologies for absence.
We have apologies from Councillor Singh and we have apologies from Councillor Sansapuri with Councillor Nelson West substituting.
Welcome, thank you for substituting. The declarations of interest in matters come before us. The last item, number 9, 28 West York Hayes, is councillor property. And all councillor properties come to committee. So we don't have to declare it interest because it's non-procunal. Is that correct? Legal? Yep, that's it. So there we go. So no one keep putting your hands up, saying, oh, I know him. Well, we all know him. All right, there we go. Okay, now the other thing is we need to sign and receive the minutes of the previous meeting. We agreed on those? Thank you very much. The matters that have been notified in advance or urgent, there are none. And I can confirm that all items are in part 1 and nothing will be in part 2 tonight. I think I have covered everything off there, so without further ado, I will, when you come up to speak, I'll give you the rundown of what you're allowed and what you can do as petitioners or applicants. So, first item is item 6, 18 St Edmunds Avenue, Ruislip. Max.
Okay, the proposal is for the retention of a single-storey rear extension, from the demolition of the existing extension, conversion of roof space habitable use to include rear dormer, 2 front dormers, and the installation of various roof lights, along with changes to the fenestration and the conversion of the roof from hip to gable. Now, this is a detached bungalow in a suburban area. There are no planning policy designations of note for the site. It's not an area of designated heritage. It's not a conservation area or any other designation. So there we are. You can see boundary of the green belt, beyond the estate there in that kind of the site context. And there it is for an aerial view, and I think that shows what the previous hipped roof would have looked like. So the proposal, there it is in the context on the block plan, in the context of its neighbouring buildings, neighbouring properties. Rear extension would be of a similar length to the ones on the adjacent properties either side. And that's going back through just a few plans showing the previous existing building was not a detached bungalow with a hipped roof. Like this, a few other images. We can come back to these if necessary. Coming on to the proposed plan, which was retrospective, has already been constructed. This is a key view showing the front and rear elevations with the front roof, the front dormers and the rear dormer as well. Now, there's quite a lot of history on this site, but general. Most of the components, in fact all the components have been approved under various permissions previously, and the current scheme sort of brings them together. Previously, there's been planning permission for the front dormers, and certificate of lawfulness was previously granted for the rear dormer, and obviously there's permission as well for the rear extension. So there we are. That's the roof plan of the proposed scheme, which is existing. This is what was previously approved as planning permission. That there's two separate dormer windows on the rear elevation. I know the current proposal is wider, but that reflects the previous certificate of lawfulness that was granted. And here's the previous certificate of lawfulness. Of course, this one wouldn't have had the roof lights on the front, because those wouldn't be the dormers on the front, because those wouldn't have been permitted development. So there it is, as it is in situ, and that's the rear elevation. And here we are seeing where it is along the boundary, and its relationship to properties on either side. And yeah, that concludes my presentation. There's generally a number of other properties in the vicinity which have similar sort of conversions and front dormers and rear dormers of similar size, so it's not considered that it would look out of place.
Thank you very much. Okay, fine. We will do that. Okay, we will speak louder. How about that? Did you hear my opening statement? Okay. All right then. If there's anything, I'll be a pleasure. No, I've got a captive audience. It's not really a problem. Okay, fine. Okay, now, yeah, I just hope that ladder is removed from that window. Anyway, it's fine. But okay, so the first thing, we have a petition organised called Victoria Barnes. Are you present? Would you like to come forth? No, please, it's fine. I thought you were going to put some music on for us as well. Not Carnival to the end of August, I'm afraid. It's got right there. We do have a microphone on the desk there as well. No. Okay, it's fine. It's fine. You can sit. I think you should be able to connect that far away.
I think if we put the mic on the end, we might just be able to move it onto the floor if the cable's long enough to pick it up for the YouTube feed.
We'll see. If you can turn that on as well, please. Thank you. Okay, so what you've got 5 minutes. We have a traffic light scheme. It's very simple. For the first, you have green light for the first 4 minutes. Then when you've got your 1 minute left, amber light will appear, and then the last light will be a red light. And when that red light appears, I will stop you. Please don't think I'm rude, but that's the law. Yeah. I will stop you. This is my house, as they say. So, whenever you're ready.
Okay. Okay, should be good.
Since May 2020,
no fewer... Sorry, hold on.
The connection is complete. Since May 2020, no fewer than 9 applications have been made for a variety of extensions at ground and first floor levels. Officers and members have been largely resolute in resisting the proposed changes, supported also by the planning inspectorate. It seems that now the applicants have finally worn down officers to the point that there is a weary acceptance that the house now built is okay. Whilst I note the officer's recommendation that is before you, I am here this evening to suggest that it should not be a done deal. This applicant and their architect have consistently and without even attempting to engage with neighbours, ridden roughshod over the planning system and policies. By mashing together PD and planning, they have built a house that would not get planning permission in its own right. Indeed, it is worth saying at the outset that this proposal is significantly bigger than applications previously refused by the council. It is also relevant that the same architect has adopted very similar tactics nearby at number 31 St Edmunds, resulting in a building that does not yet have planning permission and at which there is a live enforcement case. So my appeal to members this evening is to stand by your residents who play fair, respect planning policies and not to give in to applicants and architects who play the system. By mixing and matching PD with planning permission, we feel the development is now out of scale and character with its surroundings. For example, whilst PD allows for the large rear dormer which has been constructed, it only allows for a 4-metre deep ground floor rear extension. No problem, say our neighbours. We will build a 5.1-metre ground floor extension allowed by the council through planning permission, ignoring, of course, the fact that the planning permission only allows a much more modest roof extension. Also, the current large lantern window in the roof above the porch is totally out of character, and residents would like to see something in keeping with the original house and street scene. The report states the 5.2-metre ground floor extension does not comply with policy, but it does not extend beyond the neighbouring property's rear walls. In fact, the ground floor protrudes further than the neighbour's rear building line. This point is a contentious matter for us, as since the very beginning of the process we have continuously informed the council that the architect's drawings misrepresented the position of the neighbouring property, along with other discrepancies such as windows being positioned incorrectly for number 16's representation, presumably to minimise issues with privacy before the condition for obscure glass was added. Homes on either side of the development are depicted longer than they are, so whilst the extension at number 18 has been built roughly to depth on its plan, the permission for this extra large extension was only granted by the council with the single reason that it would not extend beyond either of the neighbouring properties. See report for App 665. There was even an enforcement case raised in regard to this and the large outbuilding in October 21. We hope this explains why we are disappointed to once again see this incorrect justification for an exception to policy. The report says the rear dormer is larger than policy allows, but that it has fallen back of PD. However, it also states this application will be assessed as a whole and the cumulative impact of that. Surely, if looking in this context of the effect of both the extra large rear extension permissions in the roof and the ground floor along with the large outbuilding, it is clear to see the scale and bulk is incongruous to that of the surrounding area. We consider a consistent approach to decision-making requires the council to refuse consent for the current retrospective application, as the building is much bigger than in Planning Act 3835, which was refused because the position, size, scale, bulk, design and massing of the roof extension. Therefore, approval now would be inconsistent with the previous refusal reasons. It also begs the question that if a developer can apply for all these exceptions to policy as individual elements in separate permissions, then mix them to create something much bigger than a design refused for being too large 2 years previous, as mentioned above. Why not just grant planning in the first place and save all parties, including the council and taxpayer, time, money and stress? Are there flaws in the consistency of council's planning policy and decision-making process? We are concerned this sets precedent to applicants with the time and inclination to apply this method to create more of these supersized developments, which are out of character in modest residential areas such as ours. We know precedent setting is not considered a material matter, but as the officer's report draws direct comparisons to other developments in the immediate area, we feel this point is relevant and important. We thank the planning officer for including conditions for no HMO, obscured glass and restricted opening windows, as these have been important matters for us throughout the process. As a final note, we would like to reiterate we are not opposed to this property being developed appropriately, with a design which is harmonious to the surrounding area and that respects the original character of the house, but the continuous submission of inappropriate plans has become an extremely undesirable situation. We appeal to the applicant that in the event this application is approved, to not enter any more plans for further development. The house would have 5 to 6 bedrooms, 4 bathrooms, generous living areas and a very large outbuilding which should be more than adequate for the family's needs. We ask the council to add this as a condition of approval, as it would give us reassurance that after 3 years, 9 applications and an appeal, this is finally the end of the matter. Notwithstanding your officer's recommendation, I appeal to you again to apply a sense of fair play here. This manipulation of the system should not be rewarded. Refuse them again and send a signal that the policies of this council are not to be messed with. Thank you.
Time, thank you. Does anyone have any questions for the petitioner? No? Thank you very much. Okay. We have the applicant, Mr. and Mrs. Blake. Oh, it's not Mr. and Mrs. Blake, sorry. This is the agent as well, is it? Okay, so again, I hope you heard what I said before. We have 5 minutes, green, and then yellow, and then off for red. Okay. So when. Yeah. Okay. Okay. Whenever you're ready.
Chairman and committee members, thank you for this opportunity to address you regarding the current planning application. My name is Rachel Blake. I have worked in Ruislip for over 20 years. Our intention is to make 18 St Edmunds our family home, where my husband and our 4 children and I will reside. The location holds great appeal as it allows our children to walk to their local primary and secondary schools. Initially, the project was split over the lawful development certificate and full planning permission on the advice of resident services at Hillingdon Planning. However, with an overlap on the rear dormer design, we have been invited to regularise the permission in this application. On the approved applications, the planning permission references the lawful development certificate and the lawful development certificate references the planning permission, demonstrating that these were both considered in full knowledge of each other when the approval was granted. The building is in scale and of similar character to the neighbouring properties, and although it has 5 bedrooms, it is still of modest size, as 2 of these bedrooms are smaller single rooms and 2 are located on the ground floor, maintaining the original design. The development of 5-bedroom home also benefits the community by increasing the council's housing stock of family dwellings. 18 St Edmunds Avenue was in a poor state of repair, neglected and run down prior to the development. Now the street benefits from a presentable and pleasant home. Facing materials are rendered with a dark slate roof, both found on other buildings in St Edmunds Avenue and locally. The overall design of the building is consistent with other houses in the street, as highlighted in the planning officer's report. It is clear that there are numerous properties within the surrounding area that are similar in appearance of the front elevation of the host property, and it is considered that the development does not harm the character and appearance of the host dwelling scene. In consideration of our neighbours' privacy, we opted for obscure glazing in all side-facing windows, even before it became a proposed condition. Furthermore, the windows in the rear dormers, adjacent to the properties 16 and 20, also feature obscure glazing, providing enhanced privacy to those neighbouring households. Also, the distance to the rear windows of the properties 21 and 23 Keswick Gardens is more than 21 metres to minimise any overbearing or overlooking impacts. Additionally, in relation to the house's appearance, it is worth mentioning that the property on the western side of St Edmunds Avenue are built on a significant incline compared to those on the eastern side. 18 St Edmunds Avenue has one of the largest elevations from the road to the finished floor. That makes it difficult to directly compare it to similar sized houses on the eastern side, which were built more level to the road. As stated in the planning officer's report, the development is considered acceptable with regard to the character and appearance of the host dwelling and the surrounding area. We would like to clarify this is not a development-led project. It is a family home project to accommodate our growing family. The suggestion of subdivision or conversion into a HMO is purely speculative and is incorrect. St Edmunds Avenue already has homes ranging from 2 to 6 bedrooms, and whilst Condition 7 would have no bearing on us, it would be the first property in St Edmunds Avenue to have this condition imposed on it. However, we do agree that the borough's stock of family dwellings should be protected, and if this condition alleviates residents' fears and meets the borough's objective, we concede this point. The planning officer has completed a comprehensive report deciphering, assessing and justifying the scheme while addressing the concerns of neighbours and residents, which have been appropriately addressed in the additional conditions. We respectfully request your approval of this application in accordance with the officer's report and recommendation. Thank you.
You've got a minute left. Do you want to add anything? No? Okay, that's fine.
Everything was the
Okay,
same.
that's fine. Has anybody any questions? No? Thank you very much. May I take your seat?
Thank you.
Okay, we have also written response from Councillor Cawthorne, I'm led to believe. Yeah?
Several residents have been in touch with me expressing their concern over the totality of this development in the context of its setting and the impact on neighbouring dwellings. I've explained to them that the fate of any application comes down not to the views of individual ward councillors, but to the case officer's assessment of the overall planning balance in the context of the council's local development framework. I've also explained that it would be unlikely that a developer would proceed with a development without first taking planning advice, as to do otherwise would be to risk incurring some very significant costs. I note the officer recommendation for approval. However, in considering the case officer report, the planning committee might usefully seek clarity over the length of the extension. I understand officers are indicating it is no longer than extensions or outbuildings of neighbouring properties which is disputed, and it is suggested that the dimensions of the constructed building are not consistent with those submitted in the application. Officer comments on these points for transparency and as a matter of public record ahead of determination on these points would be important in my view. Thank you for listening, and I leave you to deliberate.
Okay, so we've had the petitioner, the applicant and the ward councillor. I'm going to hand over to Officer. There were some questions there about enforcement and stuff. I just wanted us to have clarity before we see open it to the floor. Katie, thank you.
Great, thank you, Chairman. So some concerns were raised in the speeches there about the enforcement action that's been taken or investigated at the site. So there was a planning permission granted earlier for a single-storey rear extension and some roof alterations. So they were investigated by planning enforcement, who have confirmed that the depth of the single-storey rear extension is 5.1 metres deep, which is in general accordance with the approved plans. There is a slight overhang to the roof. And the other thing that has been investigated was roof alterations, which is effectively, in terms of the hip to gable roof extension, that is carried out in accordance with a CLD. Although what we have before us now under consideration is the key difference between the earlier approved planning permission and this one is the fenestration changes to the front and the width of the dormer on the rear. Thank you.
Okay, so I'll open it to the floor. Who's going to take me away? No one? No offers? I must have someone. Councillor Jubilar.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Could the officers address the point which is being made by the petitioners about the length of the extension with regard to the neighbouring properties?
I think Katie just mentioned that just a second ago. Oh, basically, it's in accordance, but the roof line is just slightly overhanging. Okay. On the it mentioned, I think it was mentioned also about the enforcement action, which I'll pick up, is that the enforcement action is on the other property. The enforcement action is for they have an outer building that is being under investigation. Okay, Councillor Tubular.
Are we able to add a further condition that there are no further development on that side? Something to...
I'll just ask Max.
No, I don't think that would be possible. I don't think that's a or James can step in on this one. Sorry.
No,
if we have a legal view on it, but it's not a condition that we could be.
I think what Councillor Tubidar's getting at is that they have no PD rights left now, so they can't use that. If they have another application, it has to be an application that comes to committee, correct?
Yes, and it's difficult to see how they could further extend the building in compliance with planning policies. They've had the rear extension and the roof extension.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Is that helpful? Yeah. Councillor Davis.
Can I get some... I've seen that there's a no HMO allowed. How binding is that? So, am I saying that in 5 years' time that property can be redeveloped, locks can be put on the bedroom doors, and it can be turned into a HMO? I know it might not be a planning condition, but I'm thinking about residents further down the line.
I can answer that, but I'll let officers if you want.
They'd have to, if they wanted to change it to HMO, they'd have to apply for planning permission, and that would be assessed against our HMO policy.
Go on, yes.
So I did see that there was a no HMO clause. Yeah. So that condition, could we overturn that, or is that binding? That's what I'm trying to get at. If they sold that property on, could that person then just apply for planning permission and develop? That's what I want to know.
Yes, they could apply, and we'd assess it on its merits.
Right. Okay. Thank you.
But what it does, it gives security that it has to come back to us.
Yeah.
Unless something horrible happens in the next election, then it's not going to change much. So, okay.
Yeah.
Any other questions, Councillor Land?
Just so that we're on the topic of HMOs, isn't it? Well, according to my knowledge, isn't it that any application for an HMO comes to the planning? So then my question is the need for this clause, if that's if there is an application for HMO, it's going to come here anyway.
Planning permission isn't required to change into a HMO of up to 6 residents, but this takes away that permitted development right to make the conversion for the smaller one.
There's no HMO, not 6, not 4 or whatever, yeah? That's what we're trying to say. That's what it's there for, to strengthen it up. Okay, any other questions? Yes, Councillor Davis.
Looking at the scrutiny and the conditions in place, I'm happy to move with officers' recommendations on this. I understand people aren't going to be happy, but this is the best. Having it conditioned at the moment is better than not, so I would stick with where we're at and go with officers' recommendation.
Okay, so I have a proposer, Councillor Chibnall.
And I would like to second the proposal.
Okay. Thank you. I think it's with heavy heart, to be fair, that we do this, because I'm firm. I do not like retrospective. It makes me cringe. But the consequences at the moment, we are where we are. We need to make sure that we firm this up so we don't have any other further problems down the line. So, can I have a show? I've been proposed and seconded, and with the amendment, there's amendment item 6 here. Can I have a show of hands, all those in favour with the applications? That's unanimous. Thank you very much. That has been passed. Right. So, we move on to item 7, 22 Fringewood Close, Northwood. Thank you, Councillor Chibnall. My pleasure. Thank you. Right. Item 7, 22 Fringe Close. Max?
Okay, this is a proposal for the erection of a single-storey annex for ancillary residential use with a glazed link between the annex and the existing house. Now, the proposal is this site. It's a detached dwelling in a residential area. You can see on the map there, it abuts the green belt to the south. You can see from that there's a very substantial garden to the property. There we are. That's a closer view of the garden and the property, filling a corner plot. And this is a proposal. Members may remember a previous application at the site for a similar scheme. And when you see on the plans, that's outlined in purple. This is reduced in scale compared to the previous scheme. The proposal is essentially for an ancillary building, attached to the main house by a glazed link to provide accommodation for an elderly resident. The proposed annex would have all everything that's necessary for it to function as an independent dwelling. So it would have a kitchen, it would have shower facilities. 104 square metres would be its internal space, so that would be similar to the ground floor of the existing dwelling. Also consider that, as we did with the previous application, that by fact and degree it would be effectively a separate dwelling house and would function as such. The previous application was refused because of the creation of a backland dwelling. Its scale would be cramped and incongruous. There would be a lack of private amenity space for the proposed dwelling because there's no separation between it and the existing dwelling on the site, and also the impact on neighbours in terms of its loss of outlook, overshadowing privacy, sense of outlook, and its overbearing impact. Also, do not consider that, although the current scheme has been reduced in size, that any of these previous reasons for refusal have been overcome. There's been a reduction in the depth of the proposal from 13.2 metres to 10.7 metres, and its width has been reduced from 13.2 to 12.4. Its height has just been reduced by 0.7 metres, 0.7 of a metre. Bearing in mind the design has changed. There's no longer the crown roof, so the bulk of the roof has been reduced. But that's not significant enough to overcome the design reason for refusal. And the internal layout is that's unchanged. It still is capable of independent use. We do understand why such adaptations are necessary, and sometimes it's necessary to have this sort of specially built accommodation for residents with particular needs. But we think that this would go well beyond what would be, appropriate, and consider that it would be better to explore options for a more modest extension to the house or adaptation to the existing house. Just going through those plans further, as you can see the purple outline, it is very similar to the previous refusal by committee, and then we can see that's an example of the previous floor plan, and it is very similar. So officers are recommending refusal of the application for the same reason as the previous scheme.
Thank you, Max, for that. Okay, so Mr. Shaughnessy is the petitioner. Would you like to come to the table? Good evening. You have your 5 minutes, and obviously green to 4, amber's 1 minute, and red I will stop you. Okay?
Okay.
So whenever you're ready.
Okay. Dear councillors, I'm speaking tonight on behalf of 25 people who have signed the petition. We all know Mrs. Patel and are fully aware of her health and mobility, how her health and mobility have deteriorated in the past few years. After living in Fringewood Close for over 30 years, she has now a poor quality of life and struggles every day to climb the stairs and doesn't use her garden to avoid the steps. Mrs. Patel's children are simply trying to build an annex where the mum can live without barriers and move more freely. As you may see from the petition, most of the signatures from the residents are from Fringewood Close. 6 letters of support have been submitted by the neighbours, and most importantly, number 20, the property next to the proposed annex, are fully aware of the supportive of the proposals. They have submitted a letter of support to the council in which they say, "We have no concerns regarding the impact to our property." We all disagree with the case officer's reasons for refusal. Reason 1, the annex would result in the creation of a self-contained residential unit. Mr. Patel will tell you that the family have no intention for the annex to be used as an independent dwelling. Circular 11/95 for the use of conditions and planning applications considers the case of a granny annex and the use of conditions as a tool to avoid granny annexes becoming a separate dwelling. If this condition is not enough for the committee members, the family are willing to enter into a legal obligation. We have some slides. Can I have slide 1, please? Reason 2, by virtue of the substantial size, scale, footprint, roof form and location, the annex is a cramped form of development and is detrimental to the character and street scene of the area. Following engagement with the planning officers and after an exercise of design optioneering, the design team arrived at a solution where the smallest possible footprint of the development while retaining the functionality and accessibility and establishing an appropriate relationship with the host dwelling. The top right of the slide shows the current application outlined in blue. This development is 35% smaller than the original application. The bottom of the slide shows a reduction in not only the footprint of the building, but also on the height, creating an overall reduction in the volume of the proposed development. Slide 2, please. Given the reduction in the scale of the single annex, we can conclude that the visual impact of the street scene of Fringewood Close is minimal. As you can see from the photo on the left side of the trees, we partially screen the annex from the street scene of Fringewood Close. Furthermore, as per the photo on the right side of Ducks Hill Road, both number 22 and 20 are fully screened by tall hedges. Since the annex is lower than these houses, we can conclude the annex cannot be visible from the road. Slide 3, please. Reason 3, the proposed development would have no private amenity space provision. The existing garden in 22 Fringewood Close is 573 square metres. The gardens within the close average from 150 to 200 square metres. The resulting garden, once the annex has been built, would be 440 square metres. The remaining garden area is double the size of the largest garden within the close. As demonstrated on the image of the screen, the annex would enjoy a large amenity space. Slide 4, please. Reason 4, by virtue of its proximity, sitting, size, scale, height, and the proposed annex would cause harm to the living conditions of the existing neighbouring houses. We consider this not to be the case, as per the slide, the separation between the proposed one-storey annex and 20 Fringewood Close is 3.5 metres. The average separation between two-storey houses within the close is 1.5 metres. The annex is considerably smaller than the houses in the close, and the separation is twice the size as the average separation between the houses. Slide 5, please. As seen on the left-hand side of the slide, the proposed development sits outside a 45-degree line of sight from the nearest window to the habitable room of 20 Fringewood Close. This proves that there is no overbearing impact on this property, and the development will not result in a loss of overlook, loss of privacy, or overshadowing on this property. The same applies to 20 Fringewood Close, which sits on the other side of the property to 22. Furthermore, as seen in the right slide, the annex will be built where the hedge currently stands in the garden of 22 Fringewood Close. The hedge position is along the front of the annex, closest to 20 Fringewood Close. The hedge is considerably taller than the annex will be. The proposed annex visual impact and daylight impact will be the same, if not smaller, than the impact from the existing hedge. Both neighbours have been consulted and not raised any concerns from 20 and 24. Can we ask, has there been a site visit conducted? Because some of these concerns, there has been a site visit.
A long time ago.
Okay. Okay.
There wasn't. Nobody ever visited the site. No planning was visited the site.
Okay, that's fair enough. Well, that's something we can look at. But I think there's enough information there anyway.
Sorry, we only raised it because we thought that if they had, then it might be a different outcome or a different...
No, I doubt that. But anyway...
okay. Thank you. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. Any questions? Yes, sorry, to Councillor Davis.
You spoke very well.
Sorry, it's my first time.
No,
if you don't
worry. You spoke very well there. What number do you live at? Just out of curiosity.
I live in the next road to them, but
right.
I know them. Sanjay for 11 years.
Would the development have any overview of your property or anything?
No.
Okay.
No.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Anybody else? Yes, Councillor.
Sorry.
Thank you. It says in the documentation this is for the an elderly person staying there, part of the family. Right. Yeah. I noticed that the link is glazed between there and the house.
Yes.
Is there if it's presumably family, and I don't want to make assumptions, but presumably family living with family, why glaze it? Is it just why make it completely separate? Is the question.
I believe this.
It's a glazing to get daylight into the kitchen. Okay. That's all. Okay. Just get that daylight in the kitchen because there's kitchen door and bedroom door there.
Oh, you wouldn't get daylight otherwise?
If the extension was against the house, it would impact 3 rooms. The half landing, it would impact the bathroom upstairs, and the kitchen door would be removed as well. So
okay, and there wouldn't be any other daylight. Okay.
It would
I'm just trying to get the reasoning
that's the reason for it.
Right.
But just so
no, sorry, no. From the floor. Thank you. Thank you.
I was just helping me answer the question.
No, that's fine. I don't mind that, but it's not to add anything because nothing was answered. The question was asked there. Okay. Thank you very much, Mr. Shaw.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Sorry. Okay, Mr. Patel. Is Mr. Patel here as the applicant? Whenever you're ready, sir.
Dear Councillor, my name is Sanjay Patel. My mom, 92-year-old, has limited mobility and ongoing pain due to her health condition and worsening spinal problems. She is under the care of spinal surgeons at Charing Cross Hospital. She is wheelchair-bound and only able to walk for a short period with a walker. A letter from her GP was submitted confirming this and supporting the proposal. She is currently cared for by myself and my family. We have lived at 22 Fringewood Close for over 30 years. The house is split on 2 levels, forcing my mom to negotiate stairs every day and resulting in several falls in the past. One of them was severe and needed surgery. Furthermore, my mom does not and cannot use the garden anymore because the garden is a meter higher than the level of the house. Struggling to move around our own house, where she has lived for over 30 years and not been able to use the garden, has had a large impact on my mom as she has got older and medical condition worsened, impacting both her physical and mental health. We are asking for permission to build an annex for my mom to live in, which is fully accessible, where she would have all the living space on one level, as well as level access to the garden. Our existing house is sunken and the garden is at a higher level. The planned annex and the garden are going to be on the same level so that my mom can have a seamless access to the garden. This would allow my mom to live dignified final years of her life in her own house, as highlighted in my GP's letter. An application was submitted in November 2021 and was considered at the Borough Planning Committee, who accepted the special circumstances of the applicant and agreed with the need for the development. However, they refused the application and encouraged the applicant to revisit the proposal, reducing the scale of the development and to engage with the planners. A series of meetings were held with the planners where different design options were considered and discussed. The officer advised that the annex would need to be fully attached to the host dwelling and that the scale would need to be substantially reduced. Can I have slide 1, please? Whilst we have been able to substantially reduce the overall footprint and the volume of the annex by 35%, it is not possible to fully attach the annex to the host dwelling because it would have detrimental impact on the host dwelling by covering the 2 existing windows, as well as resulting in having to reposition all the meters and services of the house.
And we also need to integrate a ramp in to get access into the house, which has to sit in that position to come in.
Can I have slide 2, please? The slide shows the annex being considered today is the smallest possible footprint of the development while retaining the functionality and accessibility and establish...
That's the wrong slide, I think. Is that right?
Yeah, it's a wrong slide.
Sorry, which one did you want?
No, I think that is the petitioner slides.
Sorry, apologies.
So what image do you need?
I sent out separate slides. I did get an acknowledgement the slides had been received. There are 3 slides, sir. No, yeah, this was, the top part was 1 slide, the bottom part was a 2nd slide, and there was a 3rd slide as well, please, which is not covered in the petition slide.
Okay, what image do you want to bring up? Because we've got a number of slides here. So do you want to see the floor plan?
No, but I need the 3rd slide as well, sir. The slides, I had a confirmation that the slides were received.
They're the same as the Tom slides, sir.
No,
they came together.
Yeah, no, they came separately, don't worry.
Sorry, is it this one?
No, it's none of those. No. It's none of the slides that you've shown, sir. Can I resend it to...
So is it it's applicant slides?
Yeah, applicant slides, please.
Which one did you need at this point?
This one.
This one, good.
One?
We need the second one.
I was talking about the first one, but if you can just bring the first slide up so I can show you. So here the blue outline shows the proposed annex, the reduced one, which is reduced by 35% in the footprint. Can we have slide 2, please? Which shows you the roof format and that part, which is the annex being considered today is the smallest possible footprint of the development while retaining the functionality and accessibility and establishing an appropriate relationship with the host dwelling. This development is 35% smaller than the original application, both in footprint and in roof format. It is interesting to note that under permitted development rights, we would be able to build a freestanding room of a similar dimension and detached from the main house. The principle of allowing development of accessible housing in the garden as a special planning balance for protected characteristic is not uncommon in Hillingdon. A development was approved in Hillingdon on an appeal in 2017 for a construction of a bungalow within the rear garden at 76 Nordon Avenue, Uxbridge. The inspector acknowledged that the Public Sector Equality Duty, PSED, contained in the Equality Act 2010, which sets out the need to eliminate unlawful discrimination, harassment, and victimization, and to advance the equality of opportunity and foster good relationship between people who share a protected characteristic and people who do not share. While it is noted that this appeal was for a separate dwelling compared to the proposal at Fringewood Close, the circumstances of this case are similar and should be taken into consideration in determining this planning application. Our proposal seeks to provide an annex for a disabled family member who has a protected characteristic for the purpose of PSED. Can I have slide 3, please?
I'm going to give you an extra 15 seconds, but that's about all I'm going to give you. Okay?
Thank you.
Can I have slide 3, please? We do not want an annex to be an independent dwelling, and we have proposed as a part of the application for planning condition to tie into the annex to the main dwelling as to be occupied by a person is this. As can be seen on the slide, this mechanism is described in Circular 1195, use of a condition in planning permission, provided the circular a standard condition for application like this one. Underlined part slide picks up this point. If a member of the committee considers the planning...
Thank you. Thank you. I've given you 26 minutes extra, actually, so
thank you very much.
Try to be fair. Okay. Does anybody have any questions for the... Yes, Councillor Cohen.
Thank you. And before I ask this question, I do apologise for the nature of it, but I ask because we as councillors are looking at this application based on the policy. So apologise in advance, but the question I'm going to ask is, obviously this is for a very close family member of yours, an elderly family member of yours, and it's there for, and you're asking for it for a specific purpose. In the instance, touch wood, very long time that your family member is no longer with you, what are you planning to do with the purposes? Because I think that does tie in well with what the...
Sure. The plan is for me and my wife to move in there, and my children will occupy the main house. Okay. Because it solves the same problem. Again, because the house is sunken and the garden is higher level, once you have disability, it's difficult to move out into the garden without climbing 5 steps. And at the moment, in the living room where she spends most of her time, because the house is sunken and the garden is at a higher level, there's diminished light, and we have got a hornbeam tree on which we have a preservation order, so she hardly has enough light even in the summer. It's all affecting her mentally apart from physically as well.
Thank you. Any other questions? I have a question. Oh, Councillor Dave's gone.
Can we bring up the site plan again, please? Can you just point out where you said the hornbeam is listed? Can you just point out, because that's one of my questions. So
that's not the site.
Have we got a site plan? So yeah, you might have to change over. This doesn't normally happen.
Okay, it happens all the time.
I mean, as far as the annex is concerned and the hornbeam is concerned, we had a tree surgeon's report and all that.
Yeah.
So that's all taken care of.
So what I need to know is I want to know the location of the protected trees.
Yeah.
In the relation to the development.
Yeah. Very important.
Oh, this is the arboricultural assessment that we've got up on the screen.
I can't see. I think. Bring back paper.
No.
Of course not.
How do I make that? No.
AI will solve all this. put that to you. On it. Just for your bearings, that's the existing house.
Yeah.
This is drive, garage. This is the wood extension, the ramp to get attached to the house and etc. And that's the wall being there.
Right. Okay.
Our living room along here is a meter below.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Chairman.
I have a question because I was the chairman of the committee when you came before, and I asked officers to help you. Did they do that?
Yes, they did.
They did. And is this the outcome of that meeting?
Yes.
This application?
Yeah.
Okay, I'll have officers clarify that in a minute, but thank you for your questions. Anybody else? No? Thank you very much. You may take your seat.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, my question is directed to my fantastic team. So, off you go.
Thank you, Councillor. Prior planning advice was provided to the applicants on this proposal. In principle, there are no objections to providing ancillary accommodation. It's just the form that it's being proposed. It is presenting as a self-contained detached dwelling with all the functions of a detached dwelling as well, so that's how we've assessed it. The expectation of an ancillary dwelling is that it would still remain partially dependent on the main house, so you wouldn't have the full kitchen, living area, all the facilities essentially for a self-contained dwelling. So with this one here, part of the reasons for refusal that feeds into it is that it's not considered an annex. It is a detached dwelling and has been assessed on those policies.
Thank you very much. Okay, so I'm going to open it to the floor. So here we go. Councillor Davis. Councillor Mill.
So can I just ask? So you were saying this to you guys is a detached dwelling. What does planning need to make that attached? If they were to build a 3-course high brick wall and put a conservatory-style glass section on top, would that make it detached?
Apologies, detached probably isn't the right word. Separate, a separate dwelling.
Okay.
I'll step in here as well. The separate dwelling means that it has its own bathroom, kitchen, living area. That becomes then a back, according to planning, becomes a back thing development. So we have to take that into consideration. Okay.
No, sorry.
Councillor, go ahead.
Thank you, Chairman. This application, its current format, really, the officer's recommendation on this, and I'm usually a stickler for them, in this instance troubles me quite a bit. I don't think the petitioner or the applicant or anyone who's spoken for this, indeed, when their last application was here, bear in mind I wasn't a councillor, it was, prior to that, so I'm literally looking at it for what it is and reading the history on this. It seems it's come in front of this committee, they've been sent back and told to make amendments, they've made said amendments.
I have to stop you there, Councillor Goddard. They haven't made the amendments that officers recommended.
Oh, really?
They've
okay.
recommended that they thought that the officers recommended, because officers would not tell them to have a separate building to the building. They would have said to have the extension connected. Yeah?
Okay.
And they would instruct them about the things that they need in that building. So obviously they need a bathroom and a shower, and that's acceptable, but kitchen area and other things, that's not part of the
That's
arena.
very useful context.
Okay.
Thank you, Chairman. No, appreciate that. If I could continue here, I mean, some of the given some of the information I've read on this, and I believe the direct neighbour is one of the petitioners in support of this. I'm confused because one of the rejection points is the detrimental impact it would have to the neighbours. Then the neighbours are that same neighbour who it would detrimentally impact seems to be in support of it.
I think we as a committee, we have to be very careful here, okay?
Yeah.
We're talking about a planning application, and I'm being devil's advocate here, okay? I'm just trying to guide you guys, okay? What your decision at the end of the day is up to you. But it's the long-term effect of that. When the person that's lived there and that other property's gone, how would that affect someone else who was coming to live there? Do you understand?
No.
So the neighbour that's there now might think that's fine, but someone else, and be very careful, because if you're mindful to accept this, you are opening floodgates to a lot of issues that we cannot control. But that is your decision as a committee. It's nothing to do with me. So I will guide you, and you may continue. And sorry to interrupt you again.
No, that's fair enough. Thanks.
Councillor Chibadar.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I wanted to echo what Councillor Gohill said, but I also want to add most of the reasons for refusals they seem to have addressed most of the reasons for refusal. So, for example, the size and scale of the development, they've reduced it by 35%. Doesn't that actually comply with what we have asked them to do? Because previously we refused it on those grounds. So have they reduced the size and the scale, forgetting about the kitchen and the rest of the facilities, the size and the scale, has it been reduced to a satisfactory...
Yes, the applicant has been compliant on some of the issues, but the main issue that was for refusal was that it was a separate unit, it was a separate dwelling. That was the main reason. So they've adhered to what officers recommended, okay, so that's fine, but the main issue is the fact that it's a separate dwelling, okay?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Councillor Davis. Sorry, Councillor Mann, sorry.
Thank you, Chairman. First of all, thanks, Chairman, for adding extra detail on it, because obviously you have more history on this than some of us new councillors. Just to expand on the points that have been raised so far, in regards to the consultation the applicant had with the planning team. It says on, I'm just looking at the agenda here on page 23, it says, during the course of the current application, the applicants were provided the opportunity to amend the scheme, however, they declined to make the relevant changes. Decline meaning that they said, no, we're not going to make the relevant changes, or does this application not reflect the changes that were proposed?
Thank you, Councillor Mann. What I'm going to do is I'm going to ask of officers, because I think it's better. I don't know whether legal want to come in at the moment as well, but do you want to come in?
Officers can have a comment on this.
Okay. Fine. So, obviously.
Okay. Well, there's been extensive pre-application discussions between the previous refusal and the current scheme. Also consider there's a lot you could do with this dwelling and this plot. Isn't it? It's a very generous sized plot. Short of building an entire new house in the back garden, if you wanted to accommodate an elderly relative, there's substantial space for extensions to the main building. You could have an outbuilding as long as it didn't have fully self-contained facilities. So it was still ancillary to the main building. You could have something which was of quite generous size, and you could perhaps bring it away from the boundary with a neighbour as well. So yeah, there's it's quite open-ended as to what you could do. What we have in front of us here really is just a modest reduction in scale for the previous review scheme. The floor area has reduced from 130 to 104, and it's still got a similar ground floor area to the current existing dwelling. So it still is basically a house despite that reduction, and it is still fully self-contained. And the impacts still apply in terms of its impact on neighbours and the fact there isn't a separate amenity space for it.
Mr. Mann, does that help?
It does help. I've just got one more question.
Yeah, of course, please.
The gist I'm getting of it is that it's fully sort of functional, self-functional. That's one of the issues. And if, I'm just speculating, if the kitchen was, let's say, removed, and they resubmitted, how far is the existing kitchen from the current proposal? Is it on the ground floor, and is it, because a kitchen is not something you're going to use all the time during the day, how far is it in terms of practicalities?
I haven't been inside the house myself, but it does look like the kitchen's at the closest point of the existing house to where the annex would be. So on here you can see the existing building on the left. I think that the kitchen is on the right-hand window on the ground floor on that elevation, but I'm not 100% sure because I don't have the floor plans of the existing house. So slide 60. There we are. Yes, there we are. We can see it on the plans there. Yeah.
Okay, Councillor Mann.
I don't know. Maybe my question's not been understood. I wanted the current.
It's on the ground floor, on the same side as where the extension, the separate building will be, but it's lower down.
Okay.
Yeah. It's just there, look, on the drawing there.
And it's not accessible at the moment.
I have no idea. It's not. Apparently they're saying it's not. But,
okay.
Yeah, but going to take. Sorry, this is not. It's not an open meeting. No, thank you. Honestly, please. We are trying to conduct business here. This is not helping at all. Okay. Okay. I'm just going to get some legal advice. Okay.
Thank you, Chairman. We have taken all the discussion points on board. This report is very detailed. We've considered the policy and it is policy compliant for it to be refused. The assessments have been carried out on this. Whilst we appreciate the input you've had, it is the detailed report we would have to abide by, and the decision is obviously on the councillors. So I'll leave it on the councillors to make that decision. Thank you.
Right. Councillor Davis.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This really doesn't sit well with me. I've got a number of questions, if I may ask. So the lack of immediate space. Were they right? Was the applicant and the petitioner right in saying that there's 573 square metres in that property?
Yes, it does have a substantial rear garden, yeah.
So there's going to be no fence to partition that garden off, so the lady who's in that property is actually going to have access to 573 square metres?
Yes, but I suppose the point is, since it's an independent house, we're assessing it as an independent house, and you'd expect two separate houses to have their own amenity space. Okay.
My second question, if I may, Chairman. What is the distance from the window to the next neighbouring property? Is it under 14 metres or is it over 14 metres? There's no windows.
Please, I cannot ask you again, really, honestly.
Sorry, Councillor, if you're referring to the 45-degree line,
yeah.
I've got an image of it up on the screen here. You see the way it's been positioned, it doesn't breach the 45-degree line angle of the neighbouring property.
I think that's it for the time being, Chairman. Thank you.
Councillor Goldhill.
Can I just be, the question for the officers perhaps, but can I just be really clear? Is this application being judged as a separate property or as an annex? Because everyone's saying separate, but like page 31, for example, it says the proposed annex. So I'm really confused about
I'll clear that up.
Yeah.
The applicant is calling it an annex, yes? But the report states that's what it's been called. So the applicant said it's an annex, okay? Officers has given you recommendation for refusal because it's not regarded as an annex, because it's a separate building. Totally. It's a separate entity in itself. So it's just like a separate house. Even though it's small, it's a separate house. And all it has, if you think about it logically, there is room in there to do a extension that is connected to the building in a different way. It's because it's separate, so it's a separate entity. Please, can you please not interrupt anymore? Thank you. So, Now, okay? Sorry, that wasn't directed to you, Councillor Cahill. Okay, thank you. Right, so, Councillor Davis.
Chairman, can we just have some clarity from officers as well? Has a site visit been conducted?
That's my understanding, yes. So the site photos are taken on the site visit.
So we've had someone actually physically look. And
If you want... Excuse me. Really. This is a meeting not in public. Please don't stop interrupting the committee. If you wish to have a site visit, you're entitled to do so, Councillor Davis. Okay, if it wants another site visit, I'll allow it. It's not really a problem. But it has to be seconded, and we'll put that to the floor if you wish.
I'd be happier if we could have a site visit, because I'm at the moment, it doesn't sit comfortable with me.
Fine. Can I have a seconder?
I'd be happy to second that.
Fine. So seconded by Councillor Hull. So on the floor, can we have a show of hands, all those in favour of a site visit? Well, I don't mind either way, to be fair. So, okay, so we'll have a site visit, and we'll bring it back to committee, okay? Thank you. Have you got that down? Right, so, that's been done now, so we will have a site visit on that item. Next item is item 8, Northwood Commercial Sales, Auto Centre Northwood Limited. Yeah, we have to do a site deal. What's the time on it?
I think it's tomorrow, but we'll give them extension.
Right, so I'll bring it to order. So we go to item 8, Northwood Commercial Sales and Auto Centre Northwood.
Thank you, Chair. The application proposes the replacement of a vacant car sales centre with a 3-storey mixed development comprising 1 one-bedroom flat, 7 two-bedroom flats and 1 3-bedroom flat, with associated ground floor undercroft car and cycle parking and ground floor commercial space use Class E. So an appeal on the grounds of non-determination has been received for this application that's been presented to members this evening. Had an appeal not been received, it would have been recommended that planning permission be refused on the following 2 grounds. 1. In the absence of a daylight, sunlight and overshadowing assessment, it has not been demonstrated that the internal accommodation, in particular the 3 north-facing single-aspect units, and external amenity space provision would achieve adequate levels of daylight and sunlight to meet the standards set out in the Building Research Establishment Guidelines. 2. By virtue of their close proximity to each other, orientation and position, the private balcony and bedrooms serving the proposed flats labelled as Unit A05 would provide direct views into the private balcony space and bedroom 2 serving Unit A01 and vice versa. The proposal would therefore result in overlooking issues and a loss of privacy for the future occupiers of Units A01 and A05 to the detriment of their standard of internal living conditions. I'm going to be showing you proposed floor plans, so I'm going to touch on those grounds for refusal a bit later. So I've mentioned particular windows and private balconies that will be discussed during this presentation. I just want to refer to the addendum this evening. There's a minor error in the wording of the ground for refusal number 2. It mentions that there's a balcony on the unit A009. That's not correct, but that doesn't change the ground for refusal in terms of the privacy and overlooking issues for unit A01 and A05. So the wording that I've just read out in respect to refusal 2 would be the wording that would be presented as part of the Council's appeal statement in the appeal stages. Also, I just wanted to provide some further clarification and legality because, as I mentioned, there's a non-determination appeal. So, as a matter of process, once an appeal has been made against the non-determination of a planning application, jurisdiction passes to the Secretary of State and a local authority cannot then proceed to determine the application. So yesterday afternoon, the agent submitted a daylight and sunlight report. Officers have not considered this application. It was presented at short notice, and it was done to try to address the ground for refusal 1. And like I said, the council cannot make a decision on this application because a non-determination appeal has been submitted. So it will be for the inspector to decide whether or not they want to take into account that daylight and sunlight report that was submitted yesterday, not for officers to do so. Okay, so here's the site location plan. The site comprises a triangular parcel of land situated on the corner of Pinner Road and Chestnut Avenue. Here is an aerial image of the site. The southwestern boundary adjoins an embankment. I'll just show you. So here, and beyond that is the overground railway line. So this is the constraints plan. The site's not located within any heritage assets designations, but there is an area of special local character, which is the Old Northwood area, located in the north, and that's highlighted in purple. So this is a view of the site from Pinner Road. As mentioned, it's a vacant car sales site. This is a view from the junction between Pinner Road and Chestnut Avenue. This is a view taken from in front of the site, facing directly on the opposite side of Pinner Road. This is the street scene to the west. This is the street scene to the east. And I just wanted to draw your attention to this 3-storey building. So if you look where the laser is, that's where the application site is. In terms of context, because they are proposing a 3-storey building, I just wanted to draw members' attention that there are 3-storey buildings in very close proximity to the site. Right, so here's the proposed elevations. As mentioned, it's 3 stories. Officers are satisfied with the design of the development in terms of its size, scale, massing. The council's urban design officer did raise some concerns about the lack of active frontage, but on balance, officers are of the view that this is acceptable. I just wanted to talk about that. So here, where the laser is, this would be the entrance to the shop front, and that's right on the corner at the junction of Pinner Road and Chestnut. So there is a degree of activation being provided as part of the development, which is why officers have taken a slightly different view of the urban design officer who raised concerns about no active frontage. Planning officers are of the view that there is some active frontage. Customers will be entering that building from that point, and there's also a glazing here, so you can see, which would be facing onto Pinner Road. So these are the proposed floor plans. So the ground floor serves as an undercroft area, providing 7 on-site car parking spaces for residents of the flats. This purple footprint represents the floor area of the used Class E commercial units. So this is the first floor plan. It's a bit small, so you'll have to bear with me, and I think you'll need to rely on the laser. So in terms of the ground floor refusal number 1, it's these units here that we're concerned about. They're single aspect, which means all their windows face one direction, and they're north-facing. And the London plan generally resists single aspect north-facing units, which is why we have concerns in terms of daylight and sunlight. And the other unit we're concerned about is on the 2nd floor, which is also single aspect and facing onto Pinner Road. In terms of ground floor refusal number 2, the relationship that we have concern about is this unit here and this unit here. If you try to look carefully, they both have balconies and habitable rooms facing directly onto each other, so there's direct overlooking. The separation distance between these balconies and windows are 12 metres. The local plan normally recommends a 21 metre separation distance between habitable rooms and versus other habitable rooms, which is why officers are concerned that this proposal would give rise to privacy and overlooking issues for the future occupiers of those units. So this plan here is the draft plan that was submitted by the agent during the planning assessment stages. So what happened is TfL raised concerns about the over-provision of car parking spaces. They also raised concerns about access routes for pedestrians within the car park. So what the agent did is they submitted a draft drawing. Officers haven't considered this because it's only a draft, but TfL did look at it and they are satisfied. So if this application hadn't been lodged as a non-determination appeal, and if officers felt that this scheme was acceptable, which we don't, we would have asked them to update the floor plan. So we would have asked them to update this one to reflect this plan that TfL is satisfied with. I just wanted to clarify that. So this is the threat path analysis. This shows that vehicles can safely enter into and out of the site in forward gear, which is in line with highway safety best practices. This plan here shows that vehicles waiting for the gates to open have sufficient space to wait without blocking Pinner Road. So there's not going to be any issues in terms of congestion or causing traffic implications with cars waiting on the highway in order for the gate to open. They will pull up here onto the driveway area and wait for that gate to open. This is a plan showing that the proposed bin store would be within the council's 10-metre parameter. As of members might be aware, that there's a 10-metre parameter between the council's refuse collection on the highway and where the bin store is, so it would conform in that respect. I think that's it. I've covered all the points, so thank you.
Okay, just for clarity, this is up for refusal, yeah? Yeah.
I read the grounds for refusal at the beginning of the presentation.
I'm just,
yeah.
They've done a lot right. But, anyway, petitioners, we have a written representative from Judy Kelly. Is that actually right?
In the planning application, it states that Chestnut Avenue is a quiet road used for access to a residential parking area beyond the railway line and northward recreation ground, containing a playing field and park. This statement is disputed by Watkins Close residents. This statement is disputed by Watkins Close residents, as we do not agree that Chestnut Avenue is a quiet road. It is a busy suburban avenue with access and egress only via the main Pinner Road. It also serves a members' private gym, a football and social club, a cricket and social club, bowling club and a cemetery, none of which have been referenced, and all of which produce a great deal of traffic at this busy junction. Residents, of which there are over 100, are constantly battling the odds to gain a parking space closer to their homes. In Watkins Close, the dwellings were built on what was previously a council car and lorry park. People around here have long memories, and many still feel they have the right to park in resident-only spaces in the private close and regularly block our entrance. Unfortunately, as social housing tenants, we do not have the luxury of electronic gates to keep unwelcome visitors out. Parking is a contentious issue the length of Chestnut Avenue, with residents at the bottom having issues with visitors to the football club and gym. A recent funeral procession leading to the cemetery held up traffic in the area for half an hour due to the volume of guest vehicles attending. Mourners were abandoning their vehicles wherever they chose without consideration for others. The commercial space is not required and not welcome, and this will cause further issues with parking. It is naive for the proposal to assume that any visitors will cycle to a commercial space and not require vehicular parking. What about lorries unloading deliveries? This space would be put to better use by allocating further parking for residents to lessen the impact on the immediate neighbourhood. A further contentious issue is the commotion and noise of constructing the new build. Many residents now work from home daily, and there are concerns around disruption to working days. In Watkins Close, we already contend with trains and whistles, traffic and sirens coming at us from both sides. We will now have to cope with a construction disturbance too. The fact that there are less than 10 dwellings has been noted, as this avoids the necessity for affordable housing. We understand it is all about profit, but those profiting do not have to live with the results. It is quite clear that these flats, once built, will be sold off to property investors, who will then be able to charge increasingly unachievable rents to professional medium to high earners. The only conclusion is that the building will not benefit local people in any way. Allocated parking spaces will probably be sold at a premium, and those unlucky tenants who rent an apartment without parking will be the ones fighting with current residents for spaces. The objectors to this development in the current form are not gullible enough to believe that our objection will overturn this proposal, we are of the view that this construction will go ahead in some form, but request that further consideration be taken into the impacts of the surrounding area.
Thank you, Ron. We also have an applicant, Ms. St Pierre. Would you like to come to the table, please? Thank you. You have your 5 minutes. We'll start the thing as soon as you start. No, it goes red at the top. There you go.
There we go. Lovely. Thank you, Chair, very much. As was mentioned by Nisha, thank you for your presentation. Unfortunately, the applicant has had to submit an appeal for non-determination on this scheme, and that is, it was an unfortunate situation, but contractually, we didn't have any choice but to submit this. The principal issue was the fact that we'd already been through 2 rounds of pre-app that lasted the length of 2021, and then the application was submitted in August 2022 following that extensive pre-application and meetings with TfL as well. So at this point in time there's already been 18 months has passed, and then unfortunately we received no response at all from officers between August 2022 and February 2023 when the appeal was then submitted. I sympathise with officers at the moment. It's really tough. It's really, really hard being a planner at the moment, and I really do sympathise with them. But because of the contractual situation that we were in respect of purchasing the land, we had no choice but to submit this appeal for non-determination. I think had we had this feedback in respect of the overlooking and daylight and sunlight comments sooner in the process, either during the pre-apps that we undertook or as part of that 6-month period when the planning application went in, we absolutely would have been happy to make any amendments that were necessary to, and as Nisha set out, I think the scheme ticks a lot of other boxes, so we would have been very happy to make those amendments. In seeking to try and address some of those concerns that were raised, which we didn't even know this was coming to committee until a week ago. We didn't even know it was being assessed. So we sought to get a daylight and sunlight report commissioned, which I must say wasn't a validation requirement because this is a minor planning application. There was no validation requirement for a daylight and sunlight report, nor was it asked for at pre-application stage or application stage either. But we commissioned one, and we had one done as quickly as we could to send across, and that's been carried out by NRG Consulting, who are a professional consultancy, and they've concluded that the BRE standards for all of the flats far exceeds the standards that are required. So the daylight and sunlight to the flats is acceptable. Appreciate the fact that it came quite last minute, but as I say, we didn't know until very recently we were even coming to committee. So, and then just on the point regarding the overlooking, I think it might be worth bringing up one of the plans, but those balconies, one of those balconies is a secondary balcony that's serving a bedroom. So the main balcony for that flat sits on Pinner Road. And that's the balcony that's serving the living space of the property. So this is a secondary balcony, and it's a nice to have, it isn't a need to have. And what we were anticipating is that there would be a planning condition that requires boundary treatments, which is very typical in planning permissions, that you would have a boundary treatment, landscaping condition included. And we were expecting that to include a 1.8 metre high screen, privacy screen, that sits on this secondary balcony in order to protect the privacy of residents. I think Nisha mentioned there's a 12 metre gap already. And to provide a privacy screen in between the two for a balcony that isn't even the primary amenity space for the flat, we felt that would have been completely acceptable by way of a planning condition, and something that we will express to the planning inspectorate as well. The appeal is running now, and I know that means that the council aren't able to make a decision, but I think if this evening we could get a positive steer from yourselves to be able to move this forward. I've spoken to my client. He's very happy to withdraw the appeal on the basis of moving the application, a new application forward in a positive manner, and trying to find a resolution to the scheme, because we don't want to put any more pressure on the planning inspectorate. No one needs to do that. If we can have some timeframes for a revised application, then we're very happy to withdraw the current appeal. So thank you.
Is anybody in questions? No. Thank you very much, Mr. Pierre. Okay, yeah. Can I get officers to come back on that point?
Okay, thank you, Chairman. I think just in respect to the Sunlight Daylight report that was submitted yesterday evening, I think Nisha's mentioned that we can't accept it at this point because it is with the Planning Inspectorate. In terms, officers have carried out a cursory review of it, and there are concerns raised with regards to baseline assumptions that have informed the analysis, as well as lack of detailed inputs. So we are still confident in the reason for refusal number 1. However, we do need, in preparing the appeal documents, we'll take it into consideration further because irrespective of it not being part of this application, PINS is likely to ask for the LPA's view on it. So in that respect, I would ask that that should any amendment be required to the wording of Condition 1, that this be delegated to the Area Planning Service Manager and the Committee Chairman to consider. Okay. And that's for the appeal. In terms of the condition for the opposing balconies, we wouldn't consider that acceptable because if you're having a 1.8 metre high screening where the balcony is proposed, it would likely have impacts on the outlook from that room as well as potentially loss of light, so it may affect the Sunlight Daylight assessment. And in terms of your final point about progressing after this committee, that would be a discussion that we could have after this evening and the members' determination of what's before them.
Oh, is that clear? I don't think it is clear, is it? No. Well, I'll tell you what. Let's do it. Let's say. Can you just put it in layman's terms about the non-determination thing? I think that's what I'm struggling with.
So when an application is appealed because it hasn't been determined, the decision on the application is taken out of the council's hands. So any application that you see at committee asking with a recommendation, that is the decision that we'll be presenting, well, our recommendation will be presenting to the Planning Inspectorate. So in terms of this application, we're recommending refusal for the reasons stated. So members will make a decision, either they agree or disagree, and that will be the argument that we present to the Planning Inspectorate. If we had determined this application, we would have recommended that the application is refused for these reasons. So because the time frame pretty much stops once that determination is taken out of our hands, any additional information received afterwards, it's more difficult to accept. So we received last night a Sunlight Daylight assessment. We have looked over it. We do have concerns with it, so we still maintain that this reason is still valid. And that was pretty much. But we do need to prepare the appeal statement, answer any questions that PINS might have for us. So in that respect, I guess my request is that if there are some changes required to one of the reasons for refusal in respect to Sunlight Daylight, which is reason number 1, that authority is delegated back to us so that we can submit our appeal statement to PINS on time.
Is that helpful? Or you want to, I can put it even simpler if you want. No, that's fine. Okay, Councillor Davis.
I'm happy to delegate powers with that if required. But also my question would be on the traffic. Sunlight and daylight, yep, you've got the plan. I'll leave that for the time being. I'm concerned in the traffic in the area. Alan, if I may, has there been any speed or traffic surveys done within the last 12 months?
Thank you, Chairman. As part of this planning application, I don't believe it's supported by any. My colleague is helping me there. Yes, it was supported by a transport statement, of course, but that didn't include any traffic flow details. Thank you, Chairman.
Okay, thank you, Chairman.
I can add to that because obviously it's in my ward, and obviously I use Chestnut. It's actually Northwood, not Northwood Hills, but me and officers are having a bit of a debate about that. The problem for me is the retail unit and what the petitioner said about the delivery vehicles, which could be a real issue. But anyway, as again, I'm advising, the committee has to make a decision. Any other questions anyway? Councillor Davis.
Are we at the point where we can condition the retail unit to have no rigid vehicle, rigid only vehicles?
Not at the moment. This is recommended for refusal, but as the suggested conditions in our appeal statement, we can include a condition to that effect.
Councillor Goldhill. Sorry.
I'll speak anyway. It's okay.
Apologies, Chairman.
Councillor Goldhill.
Thank you, Chairman. Maybe I've just missed it in the report, but I can't see anything about emergency vehicles or emergency vehicle access to the proposed development. Could officers perhaps comment on that and if it's adequate or not?
Sure. So the issue to do with fire safety is covered within the committee report. As part of a suggestive condition, as part of the Council's appeal statement, we would recommend a fire statement report to be submitted as part of a condition, which would include details to do with emergency vehicle access arrangements in the event of a fire.
Does that answer your question? Councillor Goldhill.
I have a second question as well. I noticed the thing that TfL said to reduce the number of parking spaces from 8 to 7 on there to comply. Would those 7 spaces be for just the residents of those flats, or would there be one for the commercial properties? And what would be the case, given that I've been told that this Chestnut Avenue is a busy road according to this report? What would be the case for deliveries or waste collection or commercial waste collection, etc.? And has that been thought about?
Yes, that was carefully considered by the Council's highways officer. Full comments are covered in section 6 of the committee report. So the proposed car parking spaces are solely for the future occupiers of the proposed flat. I must emphasise that this retail unit is only 140 square metres, so literally you're talking about a very small convenience store at the most. It's not going to be a large superstore that's going to be in this location. So the highways officer was satisfied that that particular retail unit didn't require on-site car parking provision. However, in terms of delivery, what would have been requested and will be presented as part of a suggested condition is a delivery servicing plan, and that would include restrictions as to when they can have delivery vehicles accessing that site, and that's to minimise any issues to do with congestion and traffic.
Okay. Thank you. So, can I have a proposer and a seconder for this, please? Councillor Davis.
As it stands at the moment, with the information in front of me, I'm happy to go with officers' recommendations.
I have a proposer, Councillor Goldhill.
I'm happy to second that, Chairman.
Thank you. So proposed and second. Can I have a show of hands, all those in favour of the officer's recommendation? Thank you. So it's refused. Thank you very much. Okay. Item 9 is 28 West Walk, Hayes. Have you done anything? Okay. Yeah.
There was, you know how the condition was suggested about.
Yeah, we can put that in if that's okay. Yeah. Okay. Right. So, got item 9, 28 West Walk, Hayes. We have a petitioner, but we have no one here. So we'll go with. Can we just give us a report and then we'll take it straight?
Proposal for a part double-storey and part single-storey extension to the side and rear of the dwelling with side roof light, erection of a front roof porch, amendments for fenestration and an outbuilding in the rear garden. Regards an ordinary sort of suburban area, although it's an area of special local character. You can see there that's covered by that designation. And there we are. That's the aerial picture. You can see the plans here, which is one of the set of plans where everything's put onto one sheet, but you can clearly see the proposal would be site extension would be 2.65 metres. It has been reduced in width, so that now has a good setback from the side. You have a metre setback from first floor level, so it would be set down to the roof ridge, so it would comply with planning policy in that respect. The rear extension would be 3.25 metres deep, so that would be pretty modest. It wouldn't have significant effect on neighbours in terms of light. and the outbuilding would be 30.6 square metres in size, which also just about complies with policy, which would seek to have them around a maximum of 30 square metres. So overall, as amended, officers consider this is an appropriate set of household extensions, and we're recommending approval.
Thank you very much, Max. Brian, you want to read the written statement? With the applicant, the petitioner's not here, Mr. John L. Wiggins, so we'll just go to the agent, whose written statement.
I would like to say we have obtained advice from the Planning Department and amendments have been made to the original proposal to now fully comply with the Council policy as guided by the Planning Department officers. I would be grateful if you could make the members of the Planning Committee who are considering this application aware of these amendments and that I am told that the application now complies with all Council policies.
Okay, it's quite straightforward. I don't see any major issues here. Does someone want to propose it and second it? Okay, Councillor Davis, Councillor Troubadour, sorry. Councillor Davis.
I do just want to add one condition, and I'm not sure if we can do it. Can we add a construction management plan, because that road is very narrow? Okay. I'm not sure if we can add that at this stage.
Yes, I think we can.
We just need something for the side skip vehicles and stuff that they have to come after 9 and before 4. I would say something like that.
So could I just check just with legal on this one?
We're not allowed to give times. We can. James, why don't you have a go?
Yes, sorry. I wasn't expecting to speak today.
Well, it's lovely to hear you.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, there are certain tests for conditions, and I'm not trying to throw it back to officers here, but as soon as it was said, I had concerns, because is it reasonable to, on such a small development, to have such a condition? And I'm not certain it is. I'm not saying it shouldn't happen, but yeah.
I think you're right there. I think we can't condition it, but we could inform it. We could have an informative, can't we? That would be, because it's a very narrow road.
If we can bring up the road again.
Is that the best image?
Sorry, Chairman, the actual road view. Oh.
Have I got an actual street view?
I'm sure I saw one.
That's the front of the building.
Oh, maybe not.
Maybe.
No, okay, no, that's fine. It's just a very narrow road. I believe 2 cars side by side. The road is full, and the pavement is narrow as well. So I'm happy to delegate that to officers to decide.
I think we'd just look at it as an informative to be aware of something along the lines of deliveries and stuff to not. I mean, to be honest, it's one of those things actually, funny enough you've mentioned it, Councillor Davis, it's quite a good one actually, because we have a lot of deliveries that developers are cracking pavements and having lots of issues like that. So is there something around that we can pin an informative on, rather than, I don't want us to be draconian, especially if it feels like just because he's a councillor and he's the opposition, we're sort of nothing. But that's a joke. Please take it as a joke. Anyway, can I give it to you, Katie?
Thank you, Chairman. There are standard informatives we can include about the times for construction. It's managed by separate environmental legislation, but we can include the informative just to remind the applicant. And there's also a informative as well about damage to highways and the requirement to repair it.
Councillor Troubadour.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would like to propose to go with the officer's recommendation for approval.
Thank you. And I see Councillor Davis waving his hand.
I'm happy to second.
Okay, there. So it's proposed and seconded. A show of hands for all those in favour of this application. Thank you very much. Now I'll draw the meeting to a close. Thank you for all attending, and I wish you a safe journey home. Thank you.